Hello. Do you know anyone that was ever forced to do something against their own will? In today's society, there are a lot of people having to do things against their own will, and this is called forced labor. Some examples of forced labors are domestic servitude, child labor, and bonded labor. During this presentation, I would like to explain what forced labor is as well as give examples on different types of forced labor. It's good to have knowledge on what forced labor is. It is also good to be aware of these types of things. According to enslaverynow.org, an estimated 20.9 million are victims of forced labor. What is forced labor? It is any work or service which people are forced to do against their will. In today's society, there are many types of forced labors. One is domestic servitude, which is the practice of living in help that is used to cover up for exploitation and control of someone, usually from another country. An example of domestic servitude would be if a dude marries a young woman just to have her for sex and to be his maid. Basically, he has control over her. Another example of a type of forced labor is child labor. Child labor is when children are forced to commit commercial sex acts. An example of child labor is having a child model a pair of shorts with their buttocks hanging out the back of the shorts. Another example is having a child kissing a little boy and holding his hand on a TV commercial or a movie. Last but not least, another type of forced labor is bonded labor, which is also known as debt bondage or peonage. It happens when people give themselves into slavery as security against a loan, or when they inherit a debt from a relative. For instance, a laborer may begin with an initial debt of $200. While working and unable to leave, this worker needs a shelter, food, and water. The employer adds on $25 more per day to the debt to cover those expenses. The employee only grows his debt while continuing to borrow for his debtor, and repayment is impossible. In conclusion, I hope that you have gained much needed knowledge of forced labor. Keep in mind, always be on the lookout for forced labor warnings and signs so that you or anyone else won't become a victim of forced labor.